problem I find with Christmas is I always feel too tense. There's a lot of people out there who would love to own a Hilleberg, but due to budgetary reasons they just can't. No doubt if you're going to be spending time up on very high mountains in extreme winter weather, then realistically the Hilleberg or something similar and similar cost is going to be something you're going to need. However, when looking at their yellow label equipment, which is more, 3-season use, something you can pretty much use anytime throughout the year in the country without going to the extreme levels of high altitude camping, then there's a lot more out there that compares to it. Now, I've got a tent here that has just come out. It's just been launched from 3FUL, and it is almost identical to the Hilleberg Anjan. So I'll show you the differences and tell you what I think as to whether or not it's worthwhile purchasing. Now, the size specifications of these two tents is almost identical, as is the weight. I've compressed the 3FUL into a 10-litre pack just to squash it down a bit. I've taken the poles out. The Hilleberg has the poles inside it, so a little bit of a bigger unit. But if I was taking this out for a camp, I would again remove the poles and compress it down a bit. They both weigh around 1.8 kilos. I weighed this with the poles in it. It's 1.8, this with the poles, and the footprint, which weighs around 170 grams, is about 1.9, just over. So they're pretty much identical because this doesn't have a footprint. For measurements, which is pretty important to me, they're both 220 centimetres internal length, which I'm probably going to find is too short because of the steep rake of the back end of the tent. The internal width of this is 120 centimetres, this is 130 centimetres, but this is 120 centimetres all the way down, whereas this reduces, I think, to 110 centimetres. So the Hilleberg narrows at the end, whereas this stays square. And internal heights at the front area of the inner tent near the porch are both showing as 100 centimetres. So I'm going to pitch these up now. I won't show you me putting them up. There's a million videos out there putting up the Hilleberg. So I'm going to pop them up and then I'll bring you back and I'll show you around the two. Now, a little disclaimer, this Hilleberg has been sent out to me, not by Hilleberg, but by a chap called Geraint. So a big thanks to Geraint for sending this out to me to test and do a side-by-side comparison. He is on Instagram. I will put his Instagram link details in the description below, so go and give him a shout. But yeah, big thanks to Geraint for sending this out for me. So as you can see, in terms of the shape, they are pretty much identical. You have to excuse me on this video if there's lots of cuts because I've got a really bad cough at the moment, so I have to keep stopping. Otherwise you'll hear me coughing. In terms of setting up, the Hilleberg was quicker, just a little bit, and easier, and that's probably just down to the captive end poles rather than having to clip them in both sides. The sleeves seem to be easier to go through as well than the 3FUL, but other than that, it's pretty much identical and easy to set up. So the real big difference between these two is the ventilation system. With the Hilleberg yellow label on this particular tent being a 3-season, as you can see, there are large gaps underneath the tent, so there is a cutaway so that you get air ventilation through here and through the sides and through the front. There is no ventilation on either the front or the rear of the tent. The 3FUL gear tent has got ventilation on the rear here and on the front. So you can get a good through flow of air, but the main body of the tent goes a lot further to the ground, not quite touching it, but pretty close. I think, in all honesty, I may have the footprint on the wrong around. I don't know, it seems to be pulling the front pole in a little bit. But it's pretty solid. There's a bit of a breeze today. Both tents are hardly moving. I'll open them up and I'll show you inside, show you what different options there are on the doors. Now, in theory, you should angle these at a 45 degree across the tent to the other guy outs, but it does mean it gets in the way a bit. So, one thing I have fed back to 3FUL is that although this came with a footprint, it would be good if that footprint went all the way out into the vestibule. They have said they are going to look at doing that and either have it as a separate option or to change them all to have a full-size footprint, because it just makes life a lot easier for getting in and out of it, and it gives you more space to put your gear, keep it dry. Hence I've got to use my mat. So the door on the 3FUL zips top to bottom and ties up at the bottom with these two toggles. I think the Hilleberg goes over to one side. I'm not a lover of these, you sort of catch them over to one side, keeps it out of the way, but here's what it is. Now you can also unpeg the front section of the door, one side of it, give yourself a much wider opening. This is a lot easier to get in and out, obviously, and you've still got a bit of a vestibule to protect you from a bit of wind, do your cooking inside. Headroom, me sitting up without a mat. My hat is close to the top, it's not quite touching. I will put a mat in here in a bit, so I brought a mat along with me, so I'll test that out. There's one pocket here. That is it. You got a lantern hook, typical 3FUL, proper hook rather than a loop, which I do prefer. Other than that, fairly straightforward. This is the 4-season inner, so the door has a mesh top, solid bottom. The whole of the inner is solid, and there is a vent mesh section at the rear end so that you get a through flow of air. But space-wise, it's great. 1.8 kilos, not too bad. I would probably do away with the footprint, just because, okay, it's going to protect the bottom of the tent, but I've never had an issue with that before, and I've only ever really used a footprint to increase my vestibule usage area, so yeah, I'd shave 170 grams off of what the current weight is. Typical 3FUL gear quality, it's nicely stitched. It's got 5,000mm hydrostatic head, I think it's a 15D nylon outer. I'm waiting to find out what the poles are, because it doesn't show the size or description of the poles. So I'll put that up here, tell you what the pole size is in comparison to the Hilleberg poles, because I know what they are. So the Hilleberg, pretty much exactly the same. This does actually have a lock on the bottom of the zip though, so there is a toggle you can put through the zipper to stop any zip creep. A lot more heavy duty obviously when you look at the zip cover on here as opposed to the sort of 15D nylon flap that is on the other tent. Now, I've seen these out in 50-mile-an-hour winds, they survived perfectly well, so you don't always have to go for a black label to get a Hilleberg tent that will take a good beating. Again, this will open up fully to there. In fact, I'll do that and I'll show you what it looks like and gives a bit more space to see in. So the opening pretty much exactly the same as the 3FUL. Hillebergs do have an elastic toggle, which is really nice. Simple little thing. I think it's probably one of the best, as long as it's tight enough, it's one of the best toggle systems you can get. The inner door doesn't drop to the floor, so that rolls over to the side, and you've got another elastic toggle tied up with. On the Anjan though, because it is an Anjan, on the Anjan though, I was really struggling to say, on the Anjan though, the door is full mesh. So again, this helps with ventilation because it doesn't have a vent at the front or the rear. I double checked the measurements, it is 130 wide, so 10 centimetres wider at this end, 110 at that end, so it's 10 centimetres narrower. So the overall space you're getting inside is the same, it's just wider at the front and narrower at the back end. There is one pocket here, so you get one for each person if you are having two people in here. And there is a mesh section at the back as well, and you also get a hanging line, so you can put any gear for drying up on that line, just to let it dry out, which obviously you don't get in the 3FUL. What you also don't get in the 3FUL, but you get in this tent, is tons of crap that Geraints left inside here. I dread to think what it is. That's definitely the pube. So thanks Geraint. So yeah, specification wise it's pretty much the same. Space wise it's the same. Weight it's the same. But there's such a vast difference in the price. Well, I'm going to get my sleep pad and blow it up, lay down on it and see if I can fit in these damn things. Right, so me sitting in the Anjan 2, headroom's fine, just a little bit off the top. I could scooch near the front, give myself even more space, but yeah, headroom is fine. Let's see what it's like for length. Right, so with my head right at the very top, the door is here, so I'll probably be just touching it. My feet are touching the bottom. Now obviously that is without a sleeping bag or a quilt on, so this will be pushing in quite heavily into that. Annoyingly, there's space probably a good 6-8 inches past my mat. It's just the rake of the back end of the tent I know Hilleberg do one that's got 2 flat ends inside. I can't remember, it's the Namatch. I can't remember which model it is. But obviously that's not what we're comparing today, so this is a bit tight. Now with most of these tunnel tents, where the sharp angled end is by your feet, I think that seems to be the more natural way to sleep. My Phil Raven, I've actually started sleeping at the other end. Now these should always be facing the wind with the vestibule, so that the wind batters and hits the vestibule and doesn't hit the outer tent pushing it onto the inner, because it's not going to hit the vestibule and push it onto the inner, so you get less condensation. So the wind should be coming from the front, not from the back. So there is a possibility it could work with me sleeping with my head down that end. I can really get the camera in at a good angle here, but this is, my feet are right at the very door and my head is half an inch away from it. So this could work, probably work better than the other way around, because none of me would be touching the outer of the tent. Maybe my feet might brush against the door, but that should be fine because it's full mesh, and obviously there's plenty of airflow at that end. And as I say, this is where I've been sleeping sort of recently in my Phil Raven tent. So yeah, that could work a little bit better for me personally. Any normal sized person, it's fine. But this is about comparing the 2 tents side by side. So I'm going to do the same thing now in the 3FUL. Okay, so me sitting on my mat inside the front, still a little bit of headroom above me, so I think it is identical in height to the Anjan. But the difference is the width, and I'll show you. You may have noticed from the width in before in the Hilleberg, where you can probably get 2 mats side by side in here a little bit easier that aren't tapered anyway. So remember, this is a wide mat, 60 centimeters, 2 meters long. So it's a long wide mat, and you can get just 2 of these side by side. Looking at this in the Hilleberg, you can see the taper of the angle. It comes in towards the center because the far end is narrower, but it is 10 centimeters wider up here. So the feet would be squashed together on 2 square mats of this size. I don't think they would really truly fit. They would bend in, but 2 mummy shaped mats would fit in here fine. Okay, so head, top of the mat, door is there, so that's pretty much where I would lay. And my feet just touching the end, only just if I push them a bit. Now this feels a bit more spacious. It may be that that end is a steeper angle than the Anjan. Again, loads of space at the end of the mat. So I'll turn around, see what this is like. So yeah, this definitely must be a steeper back end, because my head is not touching. There is a good couple of inches between me and the inner. So there is actually more space, and my feet are inside, definitely. So they're not sticking out past the door. There's definitely a little bit more space inside here. I like it. So, nearly £900, £140. What would you go for? Tell me in the comments below. This is obviously going to be personal taste. People out there are going to go Hilleberg all day long. It's the one to beat. You know, nothing matches it. And you're right, but for 900 quid nearly, instead of £140, if you're only going 3 season camping and you want a decent tunnel tent that's going to do fairly well in the wind, your choice, isn't it? Anyway, I hope you found this video informative. And it's just to give you guys an option out there as to what there is to compare with things like Hillebergs, because obviously people see them all day long on Facebook and Instagram. Everyone's out in their Hillebergs, and a lot of people would love to buy one but just can't afford it. So there are other options out there, and I think this is a pretty good one. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, as always, hit the thumbs up, and if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next one.